This is Nick from Nick's Political Predictions, and I'm starting a podcast talking about the latest political issues as well as forecasts in the government. And this is my co-host.
Yep, I'm Calvin Mano. I'm co-host here, and as you can tell, this is a cold open, and we're doing this for the very first time, so there's going to be a lot of bumps. It's not going to be perfect. It's not going to be great, but like most things in this country, we'll get there somehow. And we'll be covering issues such as anything happening politically in the United States or globally that could affect the United States. We're also going to be diving into certain social issues, trying to give a new perspective on stuff like cancel culture, the media, how everything's so divided, and everything leading up to 2024. So on today's topics, we're going to cover immigration, infrastructure, tax increase, forecast for 2024, and just basic topics. I'm Noah's, and so where do you want to start?
Let's probably start with the immigration, which is kind of the biggest topic currently in the news, as well as a little less news as well at the White House currently. So currently, let's give some statistics out here. So there's currently been over 270,000 illegal immigrants that have come over since Biden's inauguration. It's more than the last 3 years combined, as well as there's been 300,000 arrests in the last 4 months.
So with illegal immigration, one of the things I think that's most confusing in this country, I'm actually the son of an illegal immigrant. My dad married my mom, and she became a citizen. And before they got married, she was here working illegally in a printing plant. Then she got deported, and my dad actually had to go down to Mexico City and sneak her back into the country. They're no longer married, so I'm not worried about telling that story. But illegal immigration is an issue in this country because so many people are just here working when they shouldn't be. And it's not necessarily the jobs that they're taking, it's more that a lot of them have jobs that normal people won't want to do, but it's the baggage that comes along with them, whether it's their family or their own kids or close personal friends from where they are, whether it be Venezuela, Mexico, where crime does come into the country. And I think one of the biggest things that Nick just said was the incarceration rate for a lot of these criminals. It's like once they get in the system, then they're just there.
This is also not to disenfranchise the current legal immigrants and people that want to come over legally.
Mm-hmm.
It just hurts also those people as well that have come over into the country over the last 100, 200 years that have gone through the system, and there's other people that just walk over and they take jobs, but it's not going to be jobs that people are going to want, but it's still taking jobs from certain people that need jobs.
Yeah, and illegal immigration not only is like an issue here in America. I mean, as recently as of last year, Colombia had a lot of issues with illegal immigration from Venezuela because their president wasn't providing them with adequate food, and they didn't have a supply of like grain or anything, so a lot of people were starving, where the president of Colombia actually had to use their military to block off certain bridges and to make sure that too many of them weren't coming into Colombia illegally, and then that ended up pushing a lot of Venezuelans to actually legally immigrate to America, and the ripple effect that has on certain things like our economy and the job market here is, we're going to be seeing Biden's gaffes are going to start affecting us for 8 years, 12 years from now, based off of the policy he's making now and not enforcing certain things.
270,000 alone is more than certain state sizes in population, such as Wyoming, which it's not a big state, but it's still 270,000 people coming over. It's not a small number, and it's only 4 months into the first year of the Biden administration. Previously, the previous administration in the last year, roughly 38,000 people illegally immigrated in the whole time period. Yes, it was COVID, but there was also people that wanted to get away from their country in that time, as well as the year prior. There was very minimal illegal immigration.
Yeah, immigration is always going to be an issue. It's been an issue, for every presidency. It doesn't matter what their policy is. It just seems like the way they manage it, when it comes to, like amnesty and, family members and stuff like that, where there's a lot of gaps right now, especially in like California, Arizona, where kids aren't even back in school yet illegal immigrants' kids are getting in-person learning. Like, it's just like stuff like that can't be happening. But it's just going to continue happening if like Biden and Harris don't actually do something decisive to put some structure in place, and it looks like they're not going to do that.
The president of Mexico, which was complying with America in the previous administration over dealing with illegal immigration, with coordinating with military and state polices as well as the border patrol to lower the illegal immigration, because a majority of them come from Central and South America through Mexico. Mexico's president was kind of blaming Biden on this, with not really working with him on the current situation, as well as not really with Kamala Harris, which is in charge of dealing with the current crisis, has not made her way down to the border to see the situation and how to handle it.
All right, so that gives us a good transition to the infrastructure bill, because a lot of the tax increase that Biden's kicking out there. What's your opinion on the tax increase?
So there's a couple different ways I could see this. Like, if they are to put in the infrastructure with the current situation with the budget, there's $3 trillion deficit. If you're going to throw another $2 trillion on top of that, that's going to really hurt our economy in the long run, with the interest rate as well as the interest on the debt going to be surpassing the budget on the military in the next 3 years. With adding another $2 trillion on top of that, it's going to just accelerate our debt in the economy and could hurt us really bad in the long run. I think that if you're going to do infrastructure, put it towards infrastructure and don't throw other programs that are not much required at this time, especially in our current economy. It could be a lot of waste of money, and we need our priority is to get people back in the workforce and get things going again.
Well, I think one of the biggest things that popped out regarding the green energy stuff is like the amount of money they're putting into researching new technology and possibly researching like different ways to like do things, where if you're just trialing and erroring stuff, like that's going to cost, like there's going to be a lot of wasted money on stuff that's not going to work. And I know honestly it's like there's already so much wasted time and money when it comes to this stuff. Like, if they don't have like a structured plan, if like a lot of the money is just going to go to like startup companies that are going to try and find new ways to become more efficient and make cities and like towns like lower their carbon footprint, like that's just going to be like dead air, and it's a lot of money going to stuff that we don't really need right now.
For instance, on the left side of the spectrum, a lot of the people over there say that a lot of Republicans and people that work in the Defense Department working on the fighter jets, there was a lot of wasted money there, and we could see the same kind of thing with the Green Energy Initiative, looking for new research. The best way to, I think, do this is actually let the private sector take over, compete against each other, make the best product possible, and incentivize it from the government versus the government doing research and sending money over and wasting time and money at the same time.
Yeah, privatizing stuff historically in this country, it works and it doesn't work, but at least then they have some skin in the game, and they're gonna try their best to make it work and make it profitable. Where if the government handles all of this, it's just there's so much red tape they have to cut through. It's like turning around a cruise ship. It's just once the ball gets rolling, there's no really stopping it, but yet it's gonna be rolling at like a super slow pace.
We saw this kind of with not as much with how slow it was, but how expensive it was with NASA. In current years, we see now the private sector taking over more, with SpaceX and Amazon performing a lot better with cheaper prices and more effectiveness, likely to get to Mars before NASA does. And we could see the same thing with green energy if the private sector has more, like Calvin said, skin in the game and compete against each other.
Yeah, and Biden's going to raise taxes. He's going to tax the rich. But, with this new tax increase, it's going to affect people who have an income over $1 million a year a lot more. It's going to double that rate. What's to say, 2 years from now, that $1 million is $500,000 or $250,000. And he's already trying to, they try and talk about the middle class. Well, they're always, it seems like they always say they want to do what's right and they want to keep the middle class around, but then they do things that push the middle class down into lower income levels. And then when they finally get somewhere like a higher income level, they'll do anything to tax them to almost make them push them back down again.
Especially people in that range of $1 million, which are usually small to medium-sized business owners, which actually contribute to majority of the economy, versus people that are higher up. It's going to damage more the medium and small businesses and give more people at the top, top tenth of the 1%, they say, more of that power in their company because they have more money to use, versus people that make between like $1 million in their company. They're going to have less flexibility to work with.
Yeah, and then that that'll affect employees at these companies. Then maybe they're going to get less overtime. Maybe they won't be making as much money. Maybe they won't be hiring. Additional job training. Maybe that won't happen. It'll cause a lot of like stagnant stuff in the workforce, where business owners, especially small to medium-sized business owners, they'll feel the restrictions of Biden's tax plan, where they might not be as willing to go the extra mile and hire new people for a third shift, or it's just going to affect things in a negative way.
Especially in the stock market with the capital gains tax, as well as the real estate market. Capital gains tax, if you don't know what that is, it's basically the income off of stocks, bonds, mutuals, as well as real estate, or any asset really. If it's to be doubled, they're already saying $178 billion will be drowned out of the stock market in America. A lot of people say that a majority of the stocks are owned by the rich of the rich, but a majority of Americans have a 401k, and that'll affect them in the long run as well as reinvestment into companies.
Yep. All right, so let's talk about the fun stuff. Who's going to run in 2024?
I think on the Republican side, if Donald Trump is not to run, which I think he's going to stay more of a figurehead for the Republican Party and do more speeches and fundraising, I think it's going to be Ron DeSantis at this moment in time. He's traveling to Pennsylvania very soon. He also has a lot of backing of the establishment as well as the populist Trump wing of the party. On the Democratic side, I think it's going to be Kamala Harris. I think it's going to end up being DeSantis versus Harris in 2024 at the moment in time.
My dad said something the other day about Kamala Harris that kind of resonated with me, and kind of like where the Midwest is, where a lot of the swing states are, where upper middle class white liberals might have a very hard time voting for an half African American woman as their candidate for president. And that could swing some of these swing states back in the Trump direction like it did when he beat Hillary Clinton. In my perfect crazy brain, my perfect ticket would be a Don Trump Jr. ticket. Really mix it up, because I think they're both lightning rods. But, as like career politicians are, you're going to have your typical Ted Cruz's, your Mike Pompeo's. You're going to have all the talking heads from the Republican side and the liberal side for the Democratic Party. I mean, Harris is definitely your best bet for them. And I think for the Republicans, DeSantis has the best chance if Trump doesn't run. But at the same time, if Trump does run, it could split the vote, and then it'll just be a mess.
I think also if DeSantis is to run, the minority vote in the Republican Party, such as Hispanics and African Americans as well as Asians, will greatly expand. We saw in the last election, Hispanic support surged, especially in Florida, with Trump only coming 7 points away from winning Miami, which went about 30 points to Hillary Clinton prior. Trump won also almost half the vote of Hispanics, and DeSantis, very popular in the state of Florida, around a 50+% approval rating, and already polling between 5 and 10 point over his competitors in the state. I think he'll expand the Hispanic base greatly in the party. May lose a little bit of white voters, which has been a slight trend since after the 2016 election being such a high rate of turnout for the Republicans. Suburban vote, I think, will kind of come back slightly on the Republican side, but will lose a little bit in the urban areas and have around the same margin in the rural areas for Republicans. Kamala Harris, like Calvin said, I think she'll do better with female voters and get a lot of African American turnout, though. And probably some more higher educated voters as well, which has shown a large shift to the left.
Well, there's also a chance that we're all we're going to tiptoe around it, but there's a very good chance that Kamala Harris was running for president in 2024 because she is the president in 2024, and Biden will no longer be the president. At his age and the way you see some of the ways he's handling foreign policy, even as recently as the climate change summit that just happened a couple weeks ago or last week, you have like 24 of the world's leaders, and he's the only one sitting there on a webcam on Zoom wearing a mask. Like some of the stuff, some of those optics, the Democratic Party just aren't going to want, over a long.
The charismatic side to be a energized Republican Party is going to be very difficult if Biden is to run again, unless there's a certain circumstance that comes out where there's a really huge domestic or foreign policy win, which is, even at this point in time, we saw back with 9/11 with George W. Bush's approval rating surging to the highest out of any president, over 80%. But then we saw during the pandemic, we didn't really see the country come together like we did back in the day. With a huge win or crisis occurring, I don't think that the two sides will really unite either party.
Well, the problem also is no one really cares about foreign policy anymore. They talk about it, but it's like Trump had amazing foreign policy. He stopped several wars, and he brought countries together that haven't spoken ever, and it seemed that didn't matter at all in this last election. The average voter now is more caught up on social media and posts that they see on Twitter than it is on actual fiscal policy, foreign policy, and stuff that matters. So it allows for politicians to even lie more than they usually do because they know that no one's going to follow. The people who follow up to see if they actually are doing the things they said they would do, no one cares anymore.
That's very true.
Yeah.
Especially, we'll see what happens in 2022 and 2021. We see coming up very soon the Texas election, the special election. I'm going to be live streaming, so make sure to tune in that day. I'll post on my Twitter account. I'll link it down below.
Yep. Dark horse.
We'll see really how things go with the Republicans and Democrats turn out, but might have to turn the Republican Party or the Democratic Party in a slight different direction on how campaigning and fundraising goes.
Who's your dark horse? Anyone crazy you think's going to run for president?
For what side?
Both.
Democrats, I'm going to say maybe AOC, because the Democrats are thinking of trying to get rid of her district in New York. If that happens, she may run for senator of New York against Chuck Schumer, maybe run for governor. If not, she may run for president. On the Republican side, I think the dark horse maybe like a Mike Lindell or Don Jr. that comes up.
Or my guy Tucker Carlson.
Tucker Carlson, I think he would do better, but if you're saying more of a dark horse, I would say Mike Lindell.
Yeah. If he has any money left by the time.
He'll take out a loan. It's fine.
Yeah, I keep a keen eye on Tucker. Anyone who follows him on social media over the last 4 or 5 years has noticed he doesn't really have a social media presence, which is a good thing. And as of recently, he started doing more videos that have been posted to his Facebook page. He's doing more videos for Fox. He's doing a lot more for their web content, where they're really making him the face of the channel, and I think you could see that pivoting him into possibly dipping his toe into running for president, because Trump showed us that you don't need to be a governor or a senator or anything to become president. You just need to get the country behind you.
Especially in the current Republican Party today, with the establishment being really rejected in majority of the states, and performance showing a lot better from Trump to Mitt Romney. Mitt Romney performing better in more establishment states such as Georgia and Arizona and Texas, but Trump performing better in the Midwest such as Ohio, Iowa, Michigan, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, Minnesota, Florida. More of that populist kind of candidate, which is more for the people sounding, as well as more people policies such as trade and immigration shown on the Republican platform versus just taxes and budgeting, really energizing a lot of the voters like we saw with the high turnout election in 2020.
Yeah. So we're going to try and do this weekly. We're going to be pushing content out a lot. Twitter pages will be active. Every time there's going to be something like an election or anything that, you know, would garner something that we should put something together for, we'll get a video out there. We'll get audio out there. Obviously, this is a work in progress, so we're just going to have fun while doing it. Got anything else you want to cover?
Make sure to, like I said earlier, tune into the live stream on the Texas election. That'll be very interesting. A suburban district.
Like and subscribe. Always like and subscribe. Leave comments.
If you have any suggestions, leave them down below. And thank you for watching. Hope to see everyone in the next podcast and future videos. Thank you.